They said girls are a waste of money. They said, why educate her? She'll end up in the kitchen. They said, she's a burden, not a blessing. But let me tell you something. Every time someone underestimated a girl, she rose stronger. Every time the world said no, she created her own yes. A girl is not a liability. A girl is limitless. She builds, she leads, she fights, she wins. She can be a scientist, an artist, a leader, a CEO, even a change maker who shakes the world. Invest in a girl, and you invest in a nation. You don't just raise a daughter, you raise a revolution. Because when girls rise, the world rises. And to everyone who ever said girls are a waste of money, thank you, you lit the fire in her soul, and now she's unstoppable. They said girls are a waste of money. Why spend on her when she'll just get married and leave? Why invest in her dreams when tradition says her role is already defined? These are the echoes of an outdated mindset, a mindset that views daughters as liabilities instead of the leaders, creators, and change agents they truly are. But here's the truth that no one tells you loud enough. Girls are not a waste, they are the greatest untapped potential in our world. What if we stopped asking, why should we spend on her, and started asking, what happens if we don't? Because the real cost isn't in raising a daughter, it's in denying her the chance to rise. Imagine this, a young girl with fire in her heart and dreams in her eyes. She wants to go to school, to study, to create, to be someone, but she's told to stay silent, to cook, clean, obey, to stop dreaming and start accepting. This is the reality for millions of girls. Their wings are clipped before they can even try to fly. And the only reason, because someone decided her future wasn't worth the money. But that same girl, when given a chance, can turn her life and the lives around her into something extraordinary. She can become a doctor who heals hundreds, an engineer who builds cities, an artist who paints history, or a teacher who changes generations. She could become the one who earns for the family, supports her parents in old age, and uplifts her entire community. And all of this, only if someone believed she was worth it. Let's be honest, money is spent every day on weddings, luxuries, traditions, but investing in a girl is different. It's not a one-time transaction. It's planting a seed that grows into a tree that shelters many. Yet people still hesitate. Why? Because they've been taught to believe a girl gives less in return, that she doesn't carry the family name, that she belongs somewhere else. This thinking is not just wrong, it's dangerous, because when you tell a girl she isn't worth it, you're not just crushing her spirit, you're slowing down a nation, you're holding back progress. A girl who is given nothing cannot give anything back, but a girl who is given everything, education, opportunity, belief, she will give back tenfold. She will give her best, she will break barriers. She will become unstoppable. They said girls are a waste of money, but what they fail to see is that girls are power, they are possibility. They are the future not just of families, but of entire countries. The problem isn't with girls, it's with the lens through which the world sees them. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we changed that lens. Maybe it's time we started asking, what if she is the one who changes everything? What if she was never a waste but the world's greatest return on investment waiting to happen? They told her no, again and again. No, this isn't for girls. No, girls don't do that. No, you won't be allowed. But what they didn't realize is that every no was sharpening her focus, feeding her fire, strengthening her resolve. Because girls who are denied opportunities don't just give up, they build their own. They create paths where none existed. They transform rejection into redirection. That's the power they never saw coming. She wasn't handed success. She wasn't given an easy road. While others were encouraged, supported, and uplifted, she was questioned, doubted, and dismissed. But here's what makes her different. She didn't need permission to believe in herself. She didn't wait for applause or validation. She learned how to clap for herself when no one else did. They kept her behind doors, thinking they were protecting culture, guarding tradition. But in doing so, they forced her to learn how to fight in silence, how to grow in the dark. And when you learn how to rise without help, you become unstoppable. She taught herself what the world refused to show her. She picked up skills from watching, from listening, from failing and trying again. She turned every closed door into a challenge, not a defeat. They thought denying her was a full stop, but to her it was just a comma. What happens when the world says you can't, and you reply with "watch me"? What happens when a girl is told she's not enough, and she uses that doubt as fuel to become more than enough? That's what no one talks about, the silent victories, the hidden strength, the quiet resilience. Girls don't wait anymore. They build, they innovate, they rise even when the world doesn't open its doors. She starts a business from a tiny room. She educates herself through borrowed books and broken devices. She trains at night when the world is asleep, working twice as hard for half the recognition. Every opportunity she was denied, she recreated with her own hands. They said she didn't belong in boardrooms, on stages, in labs, in power. So she built her own empire on her own terms. When girls are denied opportunities, they don't vanish, they evolve, they adapt. They don't just break ceilings, they raise the floor for others behind them. Because the pain of being left out turns into purpose. The silence they were forced into becomes a voice that speaks not just for them, but for every girl who has ever been told to know her place. They tried to keep her small, but she grew in ways they couldn't see. They tried to limit her, but she learned how to stretch beyond their expectations. A girl denied is not a girl defeated, she is a girl determined. And in a world that keeps trying to say no, she keeps rewriting the rules, proving that opportunity doesn't always come to you sometimes, you create it. They said leadership isn't for girls. They said she's too emotional, too soft, too distracted by feminine things to lead. They expected her to follow, not to guide, to listen, not to speak. But they forgot something important. A girl doesn't need permission to be powerful. Leadership isn't about volume. It's not about titles or tradition. It's about vision, courage, and the will to make change, and she has all three. She was never supposed to lead, that's what they believed, but leadership found her anyway. It found her when she stood up for herself. When she stood up for her siblings, when she refused to accept less than what she deserved. It began quietly in classrooms where she raised her hand even when others rolled their eyes, in households where she challenged outdated norms, in streets where she walked without fear, showing the world she belonged in every space. She didn't ask to lead, she became a leader because no one else would fight for her place. And now, she's not just leading herself, she's inspiring others. She's proving that girls don't have to change who they are to be taken seriously. They don't need to be louder, colder, or tougher. Real leadership is rooted in authenticity. She leads with compassion, with strength, with clarity. She listens, she uplifts, she brings others forward with her because she knows what it feels like to be left behind. They never imagined her at the top of the table. They never pictured her calling the shots. But there she is building businesses, running organizations, heading classrooms, and commanding global conversations. She's not asking to be seen anymore. She's making herself impossible to ignore. The world still tries to box her in. It tries to reduce her to a stereotype, the obedient daughter, the silent wife, the pretty face. But she is none of those things if she doesn't choose to be. She is a strategist, a creator, a decision maker. She doesn't just belong in the room, she owns the room. The idea that girls can't lead is a myth rooted in fear, because when girls lead, things change. They lead with empathy, and empathy is power. They make decisions that are inclusive, bold, future-focused. They care about people, not just profits, about purpose, not just power. That kind of leadership terrifies those who benefit from silence and sameness. She isn't just a leader by title, she's a leader by nature. From a young age, she carried responsibilities that boys were never expected to. She balanced expectations, emotions, limitations, and still rose. That resilience, that's leadership. That balance of strength and softness, that's leadership. That ability to take care of others while chasing her own dreams, that's leadership. They said girls can't lead. But girls were always leading, just not in ways the world was willing to notice. Now the world is watching, and they're seeing what happens when a girl stops waiting for a seat at the table and builds her own. They said, why educate her? She'll just end up cooking in someone else's house. They said, it's a waste, she won't bring any return. But what they failed to realize is that educating a girl is not just teaching her to read and write, it's awakening a force that can transform homes, communities, and entire nations. A girl with an education is a girl with power. Not just personal power, but generational impact. She learns how to think, how to question, how to stand for herself. She understands her rights, her choices, her voice, and once she knows what she's capable of, there's no going back. That's what they fear, not her failure, but her success. The classroom becomes her battlefield. Every book she opens becomes a weapon against the lies told to her. You're not enough. You don't belong here. Your place is in the kitchen. She turns every page with purpose. She doesn't just memorize, she absorbs, she analyzes, she grows. Education teaches her more than subjects, it teaches her that she matters. When you educate a girl, you don't just change her future, you change the future of everyone she touches. She raises children who believe in equality. She earns, she saves, she invests. She challenges traditions that once silenced her mother and grandmother. She becomes the first to go to college, the first to speak on stage, the first to bring change where change was feared. All because someone chose to believe in her potential instead of limiting it. They say, but she'll marry and leave. Yes, she might. But wherever she goes, she takes her education with her, her strength, her independence, her vision. It doesn't stay behind. It multiplies. It reflects in every decision she makes, every challenge she takes on, every limit she breaks. She becomes a role model not just for her daughters, but for her sons, her neighbors, her society. And yet, even now, millions of girls are denied this basic right. They're pulled out of school to fetch water, take care of siblings, or because their safety can't be guaranteed. But their minds, their dreams, they still race forward. They still hope, imagine, crave knowledge. You can lock the door to a school, but you can't lock away curiosity. You can silence the teacher, but you can't silence ambition. Educating a girl isn't charity, it's strategy. It's the smartest investment anyone can make. Countries that educate girls have stronger economies, better health outcomes, and more stable societies. Girls who stay in school are less likely to marry young, more likely to earn income, and far more likely to raise educated children. That's not opinion, that's fact. She may sit quietly in the back row now, but one day she will stand in front of thousands. She may be solving math equations today, but tomorrow she'll be solving global problems. They said she doesn't need school, but school is where she learns that she was never meant to be hidden. They told her she wasn't good enough, that she wasn't strong enough, smart enough, bold enough. They said things like, "You're too emotional," "You're just a girl," or worse, "You don't belong here." They laughed when she spoke. They rolled their eyes when she tried. They ignored her ideas, mocked her efforts, and told her to stay in her lane. But what they didn't realize is that every time they tried to break her down, they were building something inside her that would one day make her unstoppable. She didn't get angry not right away. She didn't scream or fight or force her way in. She listened, she observed, and then she quietly began proving them wrong. She turned their insults into her motivation. She used their laughter as fuel. Their rejection became her redirection. She turned pain into purpose and silence into strategy. Every no was like gasoline on a fire already burning deep inside her. She remembered the moment she was told, "You can't," and that was the moment she decided, "I will." That's what they never understood, the strength of a girl who has been underestimated. They thought they were closing the door on her dreams, but they were actually opening new ones inside her. Doors of grit, of hunger, of determination. She stopped waiting for someone to believe in her. She believed in herself. She picked herself up after every fall. She wiped her tears and went back to work. She failed, yes, more than once, but she never stopped. They called her dramatic. She became expressive. They called her bossy. She became a leader. They called her rebellious. She became revolutionary. She was built in the fire. Every insult, every limitation, every moment of doubt, it only made her sharper. It forced her to dig deeper, to rise higher, to work harder than anyone else in the room. And while they were busy doubting her, she was busy transforming into something greater than they could ever imagine. They wanted her to shrink, to play small, to stay quiet. But instead, she grew louder, larger, brighter. She became bold not in spite of the resistance, but because of it. That's what rejection does to a girl who refuses to break. It doesn't crush her, it reshapes her. She doesn't crumble, she rebuilds. She stopped fearing failure. She realized that being told no wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something that only she could create. The rejection didn't define her, it revealed her, it showed her what she was made of, and it made her hungry not for approval, but for impact. They said she wouldn't make it. She didn't argue, she worked. She built in silence while they laughed, and she rose while they weren't looking. Every door that shut in her face pushed her to build her own. Every voice that tried to drown her out made her find her own volume. They tried to dim her light, and in doing so, they taught her how to shine without permission. They said, "What difference does one girl make?" They said, "She's just one person, how much can she really change?" But what they never understood is that when one girl rises, she doesn't rise alone, she brings a storm of change with her. A girl is never just a girl. She is a movement waiting to happen, a ripple that turns into a wave, a spark that lights the fire of revolution. They raised a daughter thinking she would simply obey, follow, and disappear into the background, but what they got was a girl with vision in her mind and thunder in her soul. She didn't rise for attention, she rose because she was tired of being invisible. She rose because silence no longer served her. She rose because she had stories to tell, voices to echo, and dreams too big to keep buried. She was raised in a system that tried to make her small, but she learned how to stretch. She was handed restrictions, but she turned them into resistance. Her rise wasn't quiet, it was earned, forged through struggle, sacrifice, and relentless self-belief. And when she rose, she looked around and pulled up others with her. That's the secret they never expected. Girls don't just rise for themselves. They rise for their sisters, their mothers, their daughters, their entire communities. She becomes more than an individual. She becomes a symbol. When she walks into a room, she carries the weight of generations who never got the chance. Every step she takes forward is a step taken for the women before her who were silenced, denied, erased. Her rise is not selfish, it is sacred, and the world begins to feel it. Her younger sister starts dreaming bigger. Her neighbor's daughter asks to stay in school. Her community rethinks what's possible for girls. Suddenly, one girl's decision to rise becomes everyone's invitation to believe. She shifts the atmosphere. She challenges what was once accepted. She proves that tradition does not have to mean limitation. She might come from a village, a slum, a broken home, or a strict family, but when she chooses to rise, she redefines every label placed on her. She becomes the first to study, the first to speak, the first to step outside, the first to say no. And being the first is never easy. It comes with pressure, with judgment, with risk. But she carries it anyway because she knows her rise isn't just for her, it's for all the girls watching her in silence, hoping someone like them could break the rules. That's the real revolution, not in marches or microphones, but in quiet courage. In the girl who refuses to accept this is just how it is. In the girl who dares to imagine something better. And when she rises, the old systems begin to crack. The myths begin to crumble. The doubts begin to disappear. They wanted her to blend in. She decided to stand out. They wanted her to follow. She chose to lead, and when she rose, she lit a path for every girl who had been told to sit back down.